Okay, good afternoon, class. Today our lesson is about logical fallacies and how to recognize these and how to rebut them. So let's move on. Hope you enjoy the music as well while listening. Okay, logical fallacies are arguments that are weak and really cannot stand. So they are easily identified and rebutted if you know what you are looking for. Because every day in our lives, we are bombarded with these types of fallacies, even in the commercials, in the internet, even with the advertisements in the print media. So we have to determine how to rebut and determine how to identify these logical fallacies and not be trapped by these illogical reasonings. Okay, so these are the fallacies that we'll be discussing today. It's quite a lot, so I hope you had your notebooks with you, but some of these are also discussed in our book, speaking the ebook that we have in our SIM as well. Okay, so first we begin with the hasty generalization. So you make, or we call it the sweeping generalization. So you make a hasty generalization when you judge an entire group of people based on a stereotype. So we call this like stereotyping. That is based on only a small population. So perhaps when you think of a librarian, for example, what comes to your mind? So you picture a straight-laced, a boring old woman in glasses. So this is a hasty generalization. So not all librarians are like that, but we stereotype them based on a few who are like them. Or sometimes we say some people in Europe would consider Filipinas, Filipina workers or OFW domestic helpers, that every woman, Filipino woman, is a domestic helper. So that's how low they look at Filipino women. So they might be surprised to find Filipino women as nurses or as clerks in offices or even in leadership positions. So that's a hasty generalization. There was a time I had a student which I never called by her family name, because I know that people would generalize or label her as a stereotype. So then we had this session that wherein she voluntarily confessed and aired to the class who she is, and her family name is an Ampatuan. And that was at the height of the massacre. And true enough, she is actually a relative of the Ampatuans, and she cried because of the discrimination that she experienced because of having that kind of family name. So that's a wrong way of judging people. So hasty generalizations. So we don't judge people by their cover. So that's the thing. Next, finding a hasty generalization. How do you identify? So you ask yourself about these things. For one, are you relying on the opinions of only a few people? Or does the speaker or writer refer to all or none extremes in their argument? So there were no exceptions to the rule. So are there examples in the argument only referring to a few examples rather than an entire group or piece of evidence? Or if your answer is yes to any or all of these questions, you may be seeing hasty generalization. So if there were just a few people who consider these beliefs, then it's not a reliable kind of reasoning. Okay, number two, we have missing the point. Okay, so when you say missing the point, the argument given supports a particular conclusion, which is X, but not the one the arguer hopes to address, which is Y. So if someone wants to prove their point, but they don't know how to. So they use this argument, then they add their idea to the end of the argument. So for example here, the neighborhood is getting a rundown, or they have a every corner has to be checked or something like that, a thorough checkpoint or checkup. So it must be because of all the aliens who moved in over the past year. See, so the generalization that he has is maybe it's because of the aliens, so which is actually missing the point. So how do you know? Oh wait, so missing the point here is because does the evidence actually support the argument? So look at why the neighborhood actually is run down. So is it really because of aliens, or maybe there are other reasons like the buildings are old, no one cleans things up, or etc. Does the alien theory really support the argument, or is it meant to throw us off on what the real problems are because the speaker hasn't got a clue? So this also happens in politics as well. They are totally missing the point. Then we have the post hoc, or we call it false cause. This is a popular argument that when translated from Latin, it means after this, or therefore, or because of this. So it's also known as if ... then argument. So if then. So if this happens, then it is because of that. But that it may not have anything to do with why something happens. That's a problem. So for example, if Mary borrowed Scott's iPad 2, the iPad 2 no longer works. Therefore, Mary broke it. So could that be the case? It could be possible, but it's not always the case. So Mary may not have had a thing to do with why the iPad no longer works, but it is an argument used by many people in many situations. So since you were the last one to use the toilet, so probably you are the one who did not flush it. So that's post hoc or false cause. And so it's like the reason why the cock crowed is because the reason why the sun came out in the east is because the cock crowed, something like that. So it's a false cause. So ask yourself this: if something happens, is it really caused by what the person argues, or are they really sick because they ate doodle bugs, or is it just because that they actually have the flu? So does the fact that something follows something else prove that A caused B? If not, then this is post hoc argument. So for example, if the person has got a COVID vaccine, and after 2 weeks he died, so can we easily infer that it was caused by the vaccine, or it could be caused by something else? So it has to be investigated, but we cannot easily conclude that that was the case. Okay, so or just because the person died and he has a COVID, that doesn't mean that he died because of COVID. In some cases, in some hospitals, it's because the person who got a stab wound, but he has a COVID, so they declare that he died of COVID. It cannot be. He died of the stab wounds and not of the COVID. So that could be the case for false cause. Then we have this slippery slope. A person arguing states that some consequence will happen, but he has no way to support the claim. So he just asserts that if we step on a particular path, then we will slide down that slippery slope. So for example, if we ban smoking, then people will start taking soft drugs and then move on to hard drugs, and then the crime rate will go up and up. We should therefore prevent crime by allowing smoking. So it cannot be proven that these things that he has in mind will surely happen. So, muna ginatawag na advance mo naman mag-isip. But so the argument does not make logical sense and needs to be used in emotional situations where not much logic is needed. Sometimes it becomes as crazy as this. Mom, I have to submit my assignment or else I will die. What? Why? Because if I cannot submit my assignment, then I cannot pass the subject. If I cannot pass the subject, then I can't graduate. If I can't graduate, I cannot get a good job. If I cannot get a good job, then I can't have money. If I don't have money, I don't have something to buy food. And if I cannot buy food, then I cannot eat, then I will die. So you notice the slippery slope that not submitting an assignment will cause you to die. So that's how crazy it seems sometimes. So I hope you got the point. So you ask yourself, is this a realistic conclusion based on the arguments given, or does it sound too far-reaching to actually becoming a reality? So let's break down the argument. So if we ban smoking, then people will really start taking soft drugs. Will they? Will they really then begin committing crimes? So if the logic is faulty, then you cannot make a rational connection between the problem and the solution. So if Rob likes Ashley and Jerry likes Ashley, then Rob will also like Jerry. Not necessarily. Okay, so that's the point there. Okay, then we have this false analogy. So we use analogies to compare unlike things to make a connection to an idea in literature or in arguments alike. So when the argument uses a false analogy, it does not necessarily compare things that connect in a way. How do we use analogy, for example? Like we used to compare planet Earth to an egg. So you can see that the composition of an egg, if you cut it crosswise, you see the egg yolk, the egg white, and the shell. So our planet Earth looks like that. We have a very thin crust, then the mantle and the core. So that's easier to understand because we see an egg rather than we see a real picture of the Earth's core or mantle. So that's where analogy helps in explaining, in making complicated things simpler. But sometimes when we use a false analogy, then that's where the problem comes. For example, dogs chase cats, cats chase mice, therefore dogs chase mice. So it's not really a good analogy. So not necessarily the logical conclusion. A is related to B, B is related to C, but A is not necessarily related to C. So it's like for women, somebody says, women are like slippers. If they're torn down or they are worn out, you can easily replace them. But so if you say that to women, you might get a slap right away because that's a false analogy. Okay, so women compared to slippers, you can easily dispose of when it's not usable anymore. Okay. And we have appeal to authority. So to argue with appeal to authority, you have to drop the name of a person supporting your claim, even if the person is not really an authority on the subject. So for example, we should all support the green movement. People like Mr. Green support it as well. So the reality is Mr. Green is not an expert in green energy. So in fact, he is the local pharmacist. So by quoting him doesn't really actually add prestige or credibility to your claim. So it's a wrong way of using authority. So that's why it happens for advertisements. For example, when a famous actor endorses a particular toothpaste, is actually not in authority to endorse such a product because he's not a dentist at all, or a scientist or a chemist to say that this is better than the other products. See, so that's where appeal to authority is done wrongly. So if your claim is supported by somebody which is an authority, then you have to consider that this person might have something to say, or he's using sense, or he's making sense in his argument. For example, when a biochemist, I think, a biochemist explains the effects of mRNA vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna, and the effect of it in altering our DNA, something. So it's quite alarming because the person talking about it is an expert of 20 years or more on the field. He's a professor in a well-known university, I think in UP. So you have to pause and think, oops, is this person really speaking sense, or he might be wrong in some way? But you cannot easily just shove away his ideas because he's an expert in the field. Okay, moving on. So you ask yourself, does the person referred to actually know about the subject you are arguing? Next, does the person have a specialized degree or certification in the area being argued? Or if the person cited has no expertise in the area, then is this a faulty appeal to authority then? I remember there was this book about fast your way to health. So it promotes fasting as a healthy alternative to making yourself healthy, which is actually quite averse to what we are used to as Filipinos, because we don't skip meals. Whenever we skip meals, we are scolded by our parents right away. Adlok mapas mo, nila. And so, but this person is a nutritionist and a doctor at that. So somehow, he is an authority on the effects of fasting on the human body. So, and I believe everything that he says is based on research and logic. So fasting can really make you healthier. So that's the point there. Okay, moving on. Argumentum ad populum. So this argument appeals to one's desire to be popular or one of the in crowd. So it is similar to bandwagon because the arguer is trying to get you to be one of the majority, when in fact there may not really be a majority. So everyone who bought the Kia love it. It's like following the crowd, going with the crowd. It doesn't mean that the majority is doing it. It doesn't make it right. So for example, can I make my own decisions without asking everyone else what they think? Is this what I really think or believe? Do I decide based on what other people think, say, or believe? If you can't think for yourself and make an informed decision, then you are a prime target for ad populum, or we call it the bandwagon fallacies. For example, so when the kappa was really very popular, because some people say that, oh, I earned a lot of money out of it, I even bought a car, so this must be a legit business. Why did the government allow this? This is illegal. So stuff like that. So a lot of people were attracted to that idea with Kappa, with Regin, and other companies or other schemes, actually financial schemes. So for a time they were successful. They were able to attract a lot of people, but since the government make a rundown on them and began to check the probability of their financial capacity or their ability to multiply your money, then that's where the problem comes in. So it's a Ponzi scheme. What's actually paying the uplines are the money of the downlines. So a lot of people fell victim to that scheme, especially those who came in late already. The question is, can I make my own decisions without asking everyone else what they think? And so yun, is this really what you believe in? Or do you decide for what other people think, say, and believe? So if you can't think for yourself, don't follow the crowd. Sometimes it pays good, it shows good wisdom to go against the crowd. Like a salmon. Remember a salmon? A fish that goes against the current of the river. So that's quite admirable trait of a salmon. Moving on. Ad hominem. So this literally means against the person. So in our terms, it is just a way of slinging mud or character assassination. So in our terms, it is just a way of slinging mud or character assassination, as I've said. So, for example, Charlotte is not the best person for the job because she is a mean, selfish person. So what's wrong with that argument? So this argument does nothing to show whether Charlotte is experienced or knowledgeable about the position for which it's being considered. Instead, it attacks her personality. And it happens, for example, when a person is judged based on sexual preferences, like he's a LGBT, he's a gay person. So does that have something to do with the person's leadership, for example, or ability to communicate or to sell something? So that could be argumentum ad hominem. Okay, so you ask yourself, focus on the reasoning of the argument, not on the person's character. So if a person's character is truly known to be horrible by the general public, then you should pay some attention to the argument. But do not base your conclusion solely on that information. So we all learned that Bill Clinton, for example, loves the ladies, but whether he is a good speaker has nothing to do with that. So, however, if you want him to speak at your local faithful spouses meeting, you may wish to choose another speaker, right? So that's the thing. And for example, we know President Duterte is not really a good example of good marriage. But does that disqualify him from making laws for single women? So that's something ironic because during the election he was accused as a babaero or something, but they were shocked to find out that he was the one as a congressman. When he ran as congressman, he was the one who formulated the what they call this for women, a law for women. Forgot the term. So there was this law that protects women that he formulated in Congress. So I forgot the term. It's at the tip of my tongue. Anyway, I will remember when it comes to mind. Okay, next we have the appeal to pity. Okay, this appeal plays on our emotions and asks us to accept an argument based on pity for someone or something. So, see the example opposite. Don't kick the dog, kick the ball. Okay. What's going on? Okay, so if you are in agreement with the argument because of personal feelings, then think about what the arguer is asking you to believe. So we all have causes that we believe in, but we do not have to act on every whim of emotion all the time. So you do not have to buy Pillsbury Crescent Rolls to feel like you are at home. So appeal to pity. So for example, like this, I have a student who failed my subject, and he appealed to me to reconsider his grades because he is a scholar, and he says that if he fails the subject, he will lose his scholarship. So what do you think? Should I give in because of my pity for him? No, because what I told him is this: you are a student who became a scholar, became an athlete in that case. So you're not an athlete who became a student. So that means your priority in this university is your academics. If you don't make good with your academics, then you have no right to stay as a scholar, athlete in school. And there are many students who are lining up to get where you are today. And if given the chance, they would really value that chance. In your case, you failed to value your chance of being an athlete. So you might as well give it to someone else. So that's what I told him. So it's a lesson learned. And in the first place, you know the risks of getting a failure in your grades. It will really affect your scholarship. So you might as well have done a better job in upping up your grades. So you cannot give any excuse for that. So that's an example of an appeal to pity. So just because I pity you, I will give you better grades compared to those who are really working hard? No way. So I hope you are learning a lot from these topics that we have, and I hope this will give you an idea on proper reasoning. You can use this in argument with other people in the office or in church even. So you can determine the wrong way of reasoning in in what do you call this? In resolving conflict. Okay, so God bless and see you again on the next lesson.